Okay, so let's show you two more reactions, um, chemical reactions. One of them we did before. One of them we did at the beginning of the year, where we took a solution of copper sulfate, CuSO4. And we had that interact with a nail, a small shiny nail, which is basically iron, which is Fe off the periodic table. And we're going to have these interact. And again, when we talk about chemical reactions, we want to know what this stuff looks like beforehand, and what's the stuff look like after the reaction has occurred, and what's happening, in that in between time when the reaction is happening. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the copper sulfate solution. Now again, this is the copper sulfate, and I showed you the salt too. It's the copper sulfate salt in water. And they call that an aqueous solution, because aqua, means water. And so we know that the solution is a clear blue solution. We know that the nail is solid and silver gray and shiny. And we'll put that in gently. And again, in the beginning of the year, we did see how that was going to change. And it's a slow change. So we're going to let this sit. We may have to come back to it later or overnight. But we remember from the beginning of the year, we did the same exact experiment. It should get kind of cruddy looking. The other experiment I want to do is mix two aqueous solutions. This particular solution is lead nitrate. Lead 2 nitrate, actually, because this lead's a +2 charge. And if you remember crisscross, you can see that the nitrate group, there's 2 of the nitrate group, 1 lead, so that translated over. And that salt dissolved in water is clear and colorless. By the way, the 0.1 capital M, that's a way we show concentration in chemistry. It's called molarity. We'll worry about that later. In this little bottle is potassium iodide. Well, a solution of potassium iodide. Again, potassium iodide is an ionic salt. It's dissolved in water. Again, it's clear and colorless. So what I would like to do is I'm going to take the lead nitrate and I'm going to put a little bit of the lead nitrate into a test tube. I don't want to use a lot, I just need a little bit. That's enough, not much. And then I'm going to add just a drop of the potassium iodide. Now again, we need to know that both of these solutions are clear and colorless and dissolved in water. And so I'm going to add a drop of or 2 of this. So here we go, I'm going to add a drop or 2. Notice what happens. A bright, bright, bright yellow. And that bright yellow is what we call a precipitate. You can't tell right now, but that's little itty bitty bits of solid floating around in that test tube. And we're going to let that sit overnight. And what's going to happen is those little itty bitty bits of solid are going to fall to the bottom. Precipitation, right? Rain falls from the sky. Precipitate. When a chemical makes a solid that wasn't there before, and that solid, because it doesn't dissolve in the water anymore after the change, will fall to the bottom, sink to the bottom eventually to the test tube. And you can kind of see it already. It's kind of clearing up top. Yeah, not so much in this camera, but you can see it kind of building up on the bottom there. If we let this sit up overnight, it will clarify even more. So those are the two chemical reactions I want to show you today. We're going to talk about them. We're going to record them on our data sheet. And like I said, stay tuned, because other days we'll have other chemical reactions to show you. Okay, So we let the two reactions of the copper sulfate and the iron nail go overnight, and we can see that the blue from the solution is gone. We can see that the nail is completely covered in a material, and if we give it a shake, we can get the bulk of that material off and make it go to the bottom of the test tube. It got a little cloudy, but again, if we let that sit, it'll clear up over time. And that material is copper. That's copper metal. It doesn't look like copper. Some people say it's rust, but that's copper metal. And floating around in the water now, and you can't see it, is iron. The copper from the copper sulfate and the iron from the nail, they've kind of switched places. The nail's still there. It's a little beat up, but a good portion of it's still in there. But it's not going to react anymore because we used all the copper. How do we know we used all the copper? Yeah, there's no more blue left. The blue is what made the solution copper colored, or vice versa. The copper is what made the solution blue colored, and there's no more blue color. So all that copper is now solid in the bottom of the test tube. It doesn't look solid, it looks spongy, but that is a solid amount of copper. If I wanted to, I could filter that out. The other mixture we did, the other chemical reaction we did yesterday was potassium iodide and lead nitrate. And as I told you, all that precipitate would fall to the bottom of the test tube, and it has. All that yellow solid. Okay? And you'll note the rest of the liquid is clear because that precipitate goes to the bottom. So if that's, when we mix this, that yellow stuff is lead iodide. Lead iodide has formed. That means there's potassium and nitrate now floating around in that water. So look at that. We'll talk more about that with our data sheets, and like I said, we're going to continue with other chemical reactions as we move forward in the course.